Alright, YouTube, RFK's speechwriter, basically at this point, the closest living thing to a Kennedy other than Caroline Kennedy or something like that, has abandoned the Democratic Party and endorsed Trump, but I think the reason why is probably more important than the fact that he did. Nobody fucking cares what RFK's speechwriter endorses, except that he's making a pretty damn good point about one all-important issue, which is that the Democrats have become the pro-war party. The Republicans have become the anti-war party, or at least the, hey, we're not complete jingoist party. Clinton, in order to get working class white voters on board, has no choice. Here's her problem. And this has been the problem continuously since the primaries began against Sanders, let's face it. She can't go too progressive or she alienates the Reagan Democrat sort of core of support from the Rust Belt, which she knew was going to be a problem. She also can't be too far right or too centrist or too, I guess, common sense on many things. Because it will alienate minorities and young progressive voters. She's already managed to do, by the way, both of these things to some extent, to the point at which Illinois now is supposedly in play. It's now a swing state almost. It leans blue, but it's essentially a toss-up state based on the polling there. If Illinois is really 7 points advantage for Clinton, that's probably the death knell of her campaign, because if she loses any more support, you could actually see Illinois for the first time in quite some time go red. If that happens, the election is completely and utterly over. The same with Michigan or Pennsylvania. These are now bellwethers for the election. Or Colorado, I would say, is probably the biggest bellwether of all. And it's leaning red at this point, I think, in my estimation. RFK's speechwriter has identified correctly the fact that Hillary Clinton is the one who has spoken about going to war in glowing terms. Trump hasn't. So far, Trump has named not one foreign state that he wishes to attack. Hillary Clinton has mentioned two. And that comes on the heels of voting for the Iraq War, which is a problem. Supporting the ousting of Gaddafi in Libya, joking about it, saying, oh, we came, we saw, he died, ha ha ha, isn't that funny, now that Libya is a complete shithole. She supported the idea of the ouster of the secular, legitimate government in Egypt in favor of the so-called elected Muslim Brotherhood, which was really not elected at all, never had a mandate, never had any significant support. It's good that they're gone. And she's also said that she wants to invade Syria, that she would take it further than Obama. It would be a limited ground war, which leads to a larger ground war. Let's not kid ourselves. It's called mission creep. It does happen. It happened in Iraq. It happened in Afghanistan. It happens everywhere else that the U.S. gets involved, as well as Iran. Hillary Clinton has talked openly about, oh yeah, maybe we'll have to invade Iran if I become elected. So I'm hoping that Trump brings this up in the debate, pointing out something akin to what I'm about to say. Well, Miss Clinton, how are the American people supposed to wrap their minds around supporting somebody who wants to get us involved in yet another endless Middle Eastern conflict for oil or conflict for profit? That's what he needs to say at the debate. He needs to cast her as the warmonger. This is the one way he can attack her that'll really, really hurt with the younger voters. They may not jump aboard with Trump because my bigotry, my orange Hitler song, but they're certainly not going to stay in the Clinton camp. He points this out. He says, what country have I talked about wanting to invade? Oh, that's right, there is none. Clinton's talking about hardballing the Russians, which Obama himself said were no longer a foe, just a competitor. Hardballing the Chinese, invading Syria with ground troops, invading Iran potentially with ground troops, praising the ouster of Gaddafi, which has led to the situation in Libya today where it's overrun by ISIS, supporting the FSA in Syria rather than letting the Russians deal with it since they're the ones that are actually fighting ISIS. The FSA's not, they're attacking Assad's forces. Supporting the concept of both withdrawing troops early from Iraq, which fucked it up, and allowed ISIS to gain a foothold there as well as Syria. And then subsequently wanting to go back in, expend more blood for something that we never should have invaded in the first place. And so I understand why RFK's speechwriter would say this. Also, he points out that the concept of America first is not bigoted, is not racist, and this is coming from someone who's from the Kennedy fame. This isn't somebody who's been a lifelong Republican. This is somebody who's been a lifelong Kennedy-style Democrat. And it's true. The Democratic Party of today has almost nothing in common with the Kennedy Democratic Party. The Kennedy Democratic Party's only level of overlap with the modern Democratic Party is in the form of minority rights. But the thing is, there aren't that many battles left to fight within minority rights. The Democratic Party did not lead the charge on gay rights. The Libertarian movement did. And a bunch of Republicans in latter days embraced it. You don't hear anything about gay marriage at this point now, do you? Hillary tries to cook it up, but when has Trump said, as any of his campaign platforms, oh, well, yeah, we're going to get rid of gay marriage? No, he hasn't. He said, oh, well, yeah, I believe in traditional marriage, which is bullshit. He doesn't care about the issue as evidenced by what he said in the 90s. Doesn't give a fuck. Same with abortion. Doesn't care. He's not making these platforms. Women's rights are no longer a battle that really needs to be fought in most civilized parts of the country. I think certainly there are attacks on a woman's right to choose in some of the Dixieland and flyover states, but federally speaking, the battle is already over. Now it's a state-to-state fight. They can never regain dominance on the federal level. The same is true with gay rights. The same is true with the rights of black citizens, the rights of Hispanics, the rights of anybody else under the sun, people who want to be transgendered, and so forth. And the Democrats are even losing their edge with this. It started, really, with Hillary Clinton deciding to hold off supporting gay rights until she started her presidential campaign. When she was running for the Senate the second time around, she said she felt that marriage was between a man and a woman. The Democratic Party is no longer a socially progressive force. It's a socially regressive force that wants to nitpick about every police-involved shooting, every instance in which there's even the slightest whiff of so-called discrimination, because there's no longer any systemic oppression to actually talk about. And because of that, because these movements have been successful in, I think, a shorter time than the Democrats expected, they can no longer exploit them. As far as war goes, the Republicans are currently led by a person who so far has not suggested starting a single war. He's suggesting increased fervor against ISIS, and that's literally it. Hillary's talking about increased fervor against ISIS coupled with a ground invasion in Syria, a possible ground invasion, or at the very least an air war with Iran, and hardballing two large nuclear states. She has become the pro-war candidate. Now, she's doing this to get centrists on board. In the process, she's pissing off the same people that she's trying to get to vote for her every time she rants about how Trump wants to end gay rights, which is never actually going to happen. She is between a cock and a hard place. It's one of her biggest disadvantages. I don't think she can win the presidential election. When you look at the states, when you look at the demographic shift of which states are red or blue, or lean red or blue, or toss-ups, it's not going in her favor anywhere on the board. Unless Trump magically collapses in support and parts of the Deep South, like maybe Georgia, become swing states. Other than that, in every other part of the country, especially in the Rust Belt, and especially, I would say, also possibly in New England, it's Trump's advantage. And that's by design. He knows what he's doing. This talk about how he's going to go and fuck himself at the debate, and Clinton has so much more experience, I think that's laughable, honestly. That's not what I expect to happen. I'll make it a debate analysis, a prediction for what I think we're going to see at the debates in a moment. But yeah, RFK Speechwriter has endorsed Trump. I think a lot of actual liberals within the Democratic Party, honestly, have done the same. He is now, in a social sense, the more liberal candidate. He is the I don't want to go to war candidate. So what they've spoken about, it's sort of echoing Reagan. The idea that if you're strong, if you project strength, you build up your strength, you target the non-state actors, then you probably don't have to go to war with a state actor, because the state actors won't attempt to antagonize you. They know better, number one. Number two, any proxy conflict they're hoping to draw you into has already been solved or is being solved, and in the process of doing so, now you've made yourself safer. You've also saved, by the way, a lot of lives and a lot of money. Now, W never understood this. He thought the solution was march the troops in with shock and awe. Hillary Clinton voted for the war in Iraq. It's not up for debate. She supported it. She didn't just vote for it. She glowingly praised it. She is the pro-war candidate. This is one reason I can't possibly stand with the same liberals that I stood with before Obama was elected. Because at the time, they said, we don't want the surveillance state. We don't want the police state. We don't want the loss of civil liberties, and we don't want war. And I agreed with all of these things, not realizing the libertarians were echoing this with more fervor than they were. But as soon as the president was a Democrat, they forgot all about this. All of a sudden, they were for domestic surveillance. They were for militarized police. Oh, well, we got to keep things in line, don't rock the boat, even though they were just a bunch of hippies a few months before, smoking weed and holding peace rallies. Oh, and war, it's okay if Obama does it. The droner-in-chief, he can do no wrong because he's a Democrat, so it's not really war. It's not really war when we kill a few tens of thousands of people with drones, because look at all the hundreds of thousands that died in Bush's war. Comparing the two and acting as though it's any less of a war because fewer people supposedly have died, and I question those figures anyway. Am I going to trust the government? The Bush's administration kept using the figure of 150,000 civilians have died. We find out probably it's about 500,000. So why wouldn't I expect that the same is true with Obama's drone program? Oh, it's only 15, 20,000 people. Well, if it's 80,000, well, if it's 100,000. How the hell are we supposed to know? Are you over there in Afghanistan or Yemen or Pakistan doing this? And they're still, look at what Obama's doing, still selling armaments to Saudi Arabia over the objections of many in the Senate. The Senate unanimously passes the 9/11 bill, and he vetoes that. He says, let foreign states sue American citizens. Okay, well then it's symbolic. It gets bogged down in competing judicial systems, and yeah, that could be a problem. But at the very least, why would you attempt to shield even the possibility of people being able to exact a little vengeance on the one state most responsible for funding and training the people that were involved with 9/11? And the answer is, of course, it's because Obama gets funded by the Saudis. When he leaves office, he'll be getting tens of millions of dollars in kickbacks from all of those regimes that he helped along. Why do you think he wants to oust Assad? The Saudis want him gone. The Israelis want him gone. Why do you think at the 11th hour in his final year, he okays a record-breaking, record-shattering deal of free money for the State of Israel? Because all that former hardball stuff was just a bunch of talk for political gain. That was his idea all along. He's going to get a kickback from them too. He'll get a couple $1,000,000 for signing that deal, most likely. And a bunch of congressmen who helped the deal get through, they'll get money too, to a lesser degree, of course, the president being singular as opposed to plural. That's what's happening. The Democrats have become the warmongering party. And that would be a warning to all the younger people who tend to be less pro-war because they might actually have to fight in it if a war breaks out. I would say take a good long look at what Hillary Clinton has said regarding Iran, regarding Syria, regarding Libya and Egypt and China and Russia as far as cyber intrusions and things like that. We're setting ourselves up, if we vote her into office, we're setting ourselves up for another war, or possibly two. We could even be setting ourselves up, I hate the hyperbole here, but if you antagonize the Russians or the Chinese too much, you could end up in a fight with a nuclear state. And a fight with a nuclear state, unless it's very, very quick and it's just a few skirmishes, probably becomes a nuclear war. This isn't like the skirmishes we see between Pakistan and India, with mutually assured destruction and older style atomic systems, and they both have a massive amount of manpower, so why the hell would they bother to use their nukes that they spent so much money on and end up being annihilated? This is a situation where you have advanced militaries, smaller, very much more technologically advanced forces fighting one another. The fact that we could destroy Russia or China in a fight not involving nuclear weapons does not mean that actually entering into a fight wouldn't cause them to be used. Whereas Trump has said but fuck nothing about Russia, for which Clinton has said, oh, well, he's an agent of Putin or something. You're saying that trying not to antagonize foreign states into a physical war is now a form of propaganda and being controlled by the Kremlin? It's like she's itchy just to press the little red button or something. She's a very dangerous individual. You can look at her comments for yourself involving cyber attacks and Russia and China. And you'll see the possibility is there that such a thing could lead to a nuclear conflagration. It could happen. And so, yeah, I don't blame RFK's speechwriter one bit. I don't know if his endorsement will change many minds. Maybe some older Democrats will change their minds. Other than that, maybe not. The youth, of course, the younger Democrats, they're talking about all of the retard celebrities that have endorsed her. I don't even think those people have enough brain cells to realize how warmongering Hillary Clinton really was, and really is, and really will remain. If she ends up in office, should probably be 10 times more warmongering. All of a sudden, I'm the first female president, so I gotta flex my muscles, show these boys who's boss. I think I'll go invade these 3 states here and show them what true genocide actually means. She's obviously got a massive ego. She doesn't like people. She doesn't respect human life. It's fairly obvious. Yeah, I think she'd do that. I think that's exactly what she would do. That's about all. Peace out.